Heroes of Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome into the show, everyone. It is week 2 when you're listening to this. We are recording this on Monday, September 9th, during the Monday Night Football game. So I'm excited to see when we log off how things are working. How are we doing, gentlemen? How was your week 1 of the fantasy season?
Well, I'll let Chris go first.
Oh, wow.
Kind of a loaded question, but...
Yeah, so I'll be honest. For the most part, I think I've won about 75% of my leagues this week. I won our dynasty match against Josh pretty handily, unless if some miracle occurs in this game. I think I'll be fine. The biggest loss, however, is that it does seem that because of unfortunate news of Christian McCaffrey being out, I will be eliminated from our Guillotine League. So it is with no honor at all, because I barely did anything at all, that I announced that I am most likely eliminated. Unless if Mike Williams and Isaac, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, go up for like 30 or 40 points together. So yeah. Hey, Joe, how about you? Yeah, just a bit. How are you feeling, Joe?
I hated week 1. I lost in every single league except for Guillotine. Thank you, Chris.
Thank
you, Chris, for most likely taking the nail on that one. But yeah, I lost 4 points in redraft thanks to Mr. Aubrey kicking a million field goals. So that was awesome. Love that. It was just a bad week.
Could we just say shout out to the kickers this week? Like,
to Boswell, Aubrey, some of these kickers went crazy. Crazy.
Nonsensical.
It was a very weird week 1, and we're going to get into those reactions on the next episode. But for tonight's show, we're going to talk about waivers. We're going to get everyone ready for their week 2. There's a lot of things we learned this week, some things we got to figure out still, but we have a list position by position, and let's just get right into it. We're going to hit our waiver drop that we have. Here we go. Alrighty, let us get right to it. So we're going to start with the quarterback position. This week was pretty wild with the quarterbacks that are still on waivers in most leagues. First name up is Baker Mayfield, who went nuclear this week. 30 pass attempts, 289 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and adding 3 rush attempts and 21 yards on the ground. Rostered in 34% of leagues, according to Yahoo. Week 2, up against the Detroit Lions. How much are you willing to spend on Baker Mayfield this week? Assume $100 budget. What percentage of fab are you putting on him?
I'll go first. If you are someone that was unfortunate to believe in Bryce Young or Daniel Jones, or you're also someone that had Jordan Love, I'd be putting 15 to 20% of my budget into Baker here. You need a good quarterback. It's the most important position on your team. And if you have any of those 3 guys I listed, no shade on Jordan Love. It's just we don't know how long he'll be out for. I'd be very happy starting Baker at Mike Evans is there. So Baker all the way, 20% for me, maybe even 25 if you desperately need this quarterback. What about you, Chris?
So personally, knowing that most redraft leagues are not super flex, I think I'll be a little more passive on how much fab I'm going to put in. I'd go around 5 to 11%, assuming the $100 budget. The reason why is that, yes, Baker Mayfield is probably by and far the best quarterback. There are others not on this list that I would also be fine with taking. It's just like a sort of like suitable kind of placement for the time being, and just kind of rolling with the punches until more than likely Jordan Love is back to healthy. I don't know a single soul that trusted Daniel Jones this week, and if you did, that's on you. Truthfully, you deserve to lose. I'm sorry. I don't mean to say like I'm just saying how it is. You probably deserve it. Yeah. But yeah, that's all for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean he came out swinging at 29.7 fantasy points in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. That was pretty wild. Now, I think a lot of that is the Washington Commanders defense. So
True.
I guess going forward, if you are going against them, you should be okay. Next guy on the list here is a surprise start for Week 1. We expected it to be the other guy on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields, rostered in 14% of leagues, going up against the Denver Broncos. Now this, you got to kind of wait and see because there is still a chance that Russell Wilson is going to play, and I would assume they're going to try to get him to play against his former team that is paying him a ton of money this season. But if not, Justin Fields, he didn't look good. He didn't at all. He looked like the same Justin Fields, but he did show flashes, and he added some points on the ground. 23 pass attempts, 156 yards, no passing touchdowns, 14 rush attempts for 57 yards. Nothing great. Looking at his stats, he had just about 12 fantasy points, but nothing great, but it's still a quarterback with upside. We saw that last year. Are you willing to put anything on Justin Fields, or are you just going to let him sit on the waivers if he's there, let someone else jump on that grenade?
I'll start us off, and I have one simple answer. Absolutely not. That is a big fat 0. I will allow that to go to somebody else, and I will roll with my punches somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Chris. I'd put like, if it's a super flex league, maybe like 1 to 4%. Because he's definitely not guaranteed to be the starter once Russell's healthy. I think he's going to not be the starter unless he starts like balling out, which he clearly didn't do week 1. He still got the W, but until he shows more than what he did week 1, he's a bench spot for me.
Gotcha. Same here. I'm not willing to. I'll just let someone else take him, and I'll take another player. Next guy up here is Sam Darnold, 10%. Only rostered in 10% of leagues, going up against the San Francisco 49ers. This will be a big test. Last week he did okay. He did pretty good. He didn't have a stellar fantasy day, but for an NFL quarterback, it was a pretty good outing against the New York Giants' hapless defense. This week he goes up against the Niners. I expect that to be a very tough defense. So before we even bother with his stats, are you starting him next week at all? I know Justin Jefferson's there. Jordan Addison most likely going to be out with an ankle injury. Is he just an avoid? Okay. Same for you, Joe?
Yeah.
I'm planning on I'm picking him up and starting him.
Sounds good.
I'm in a super flex league.
And go this way.
So I'm in a super flex league. My second quarterback is Jordan Love, who's now out, and my backup quarterback was Bryce Young. I'd much rather have Sam Darnold than Bryce Young. So I'm picking him up and I'm starting him.
Listen, okay, we can talk about the worst case scenario every
That's a real example. That's my team.
I know.
That's my life right now.
That's so funny.
I'm playing Sam Darnold.
It's like, that's not made up. It's me. That's
me.
My
this is the life I'm living right now. I'm on the dark
street. That's so funny.
Cool.
Oh man, that's so good.
All right, so how much are you willing to put on him then, Joe?
I'm afraid to tell you because you're in that league, and if you overbid,
I'll go first. I'll set a baseline. I'll set a baseline.
Fine. In that league, I have Patrick Mahomes and CJ Stroud. I'm good. I'm not going
this
for
guy.
him.
What is this guy? Who does he think he is?
I kind of don't want to. What if people in the league listen and I tell them exactly how much I'm bidding for?
Here we go.
I'm gonna give a range. Okay. It's between 5 and 20% of my fab budget.
That's a big range.
I was expecting.
I can't be
between
specific.
0 and 100.
I was gonna spend that too. I'll go out with a range here. I'm actually going around like maybe anywhere between 6 and 8% for the sole purpose of not actually for this week. I'm stashing him and I am saving him for other matchups later throughout the year.
Gotcha. All right, last quarterback up here on the list is Geno Smith, rostered in 32% of leagues, gets the New England Patriots defense up next. Last week, 25 pass attempts for 171 yards, 1 passing touchdown, an interception, 4 rush attempts for 30 yards, and a rushing score on the ground. I know they won, but I watched a good part of that game, and it was not pretty. They could not get off the 1 yard line to save their lives until they did, and then the Broncos just kind of coughed up the ball like all the time. So if he is available, I mean, 32% of leagues he's mostly picked up kind of, but what are you willing to put on Geno Smith? Do you think last week was somewhat of a fluke? Do you think it's going to get better? Because that offensive line looked terrible.
Yeah, I think you might call me crazy, but I think I'd rather take my shot on definitely on Baker over Geno, and
100%.
possibly on Sam Darnold over Geno.
That's where I draw the line.
He looked Sam Darnold. Granted, it was against the Giants, who we all love and hate because they suck, but Sam Darnold looked pretty good. Geno Smith, on the other hand, did not look very good. So
yeah, he looked pretty bad.
He did. He did not look good. I'll keep it quick and simple. I think that was perhaps a slow start into the season. I don't think he's going to get like that. I don't think they're going to be contenders by any means, but I don't think they'll be anywhere near that bad moving forward. I hope. I'll go with like 3 or 4% of my fab though. Like this is kind of like one of those situations where I'll put similar fab numbers with the guy I'm going to drop with Sam Darnold, and I'm going to hope that I get one of them and stash them for the rest of the year. That's kind of what I'm going with here.
Gotcha.
Joe, what about you?
yeah, I'll spend like between anywhere from 0 to 5% on him and put him as a bench stash or as my backup quarterback on that bye week or something like that. If you had like Bryce Young or Daniel Jones on there and you've finally hit the ground and realized how terrible they are, and you're like, well, maybe I should put Geno there instead.
Welcome to reality. Sometimes it hurts, but that's why we're here. All right, so we're going to move on to the running back position here. We're going to start with two guys here that are mostly rostered, but just check your waivers, see. They might not have been drafted if you have a shallower league. They might still be there. So Zach Charbonnet and J.K. Dobbins. Now, let's start with Zach Charbonnet first. Ken Walker went out with I think it was an abdomen injury, or oblique or something. All reports say he's good, but just in case, we saw him be pretty good this week. I mean, he didn't do anything crazy. He caught the touchdowns, what kind of put him on the map. But it's still backup running back. Could be a flex play, potentially. Start with Zach Charbonnet. Give me a quick, what percentage of your fab you willing to do?
Before I do that, I just want to make sure, everyone, congratulations. Aaron Rodgers survived 3 snaps. Let's go. Can we get a round of applause for Aaron Rodgers surviving more than 3 snaps? Thank God. Anyway,
Or the other Achilles.
moving on. Yeah, really fast. I'd throw like maybe 10% at most if you're worried about Ken Walker. You're only grabbing him, I think, in my opinion, if you have Ken Walker, because as you said, I think he's gonna be fine. So yeah, I'd throw maybe around 10%.
Yeah, I'm right around the 10, 11% too, but I didn't Walker get some sort of injury too in this game?
Yeah,
it was
it's
an
the abdomen.
injury. Yeah.
Something to monitor. So I kind of would be very happy with picking up Bigsby here and
Charbonnet. Yeah,
sorry.
We'll get there. Don't worry. For
Charbonnet. That's what I'm talking about. Charbonnet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he, like I said, 8 rushes for 12 yards, nothing crazy. He had 2 receptions and caught the touchdown on 3 targets. So he's not super involved right now, but I think the game script was kind of a little bit weird. So I do think he'll get a little bit more work this week and potentially longer. But we'll see. Now, J.K. Dobbins, Joe, I want you to go with this one because were. We went full circle. We got you back to what we thought was reality, and turns out you were right. So go ahead.
I was on this. I traded for Dobbins last year. Chris finagled me to get him. He got hurt.
That's not what happened.
I was very sad. I was in a deep hole of depression. Then I'm like, he's healthy. He looks good. I'm like, this is his year. He's on the Chargers. He's going to be the starting back. Chris and Matt convinced me I was wrong. I looked up an article. It said 96% of all fantasy analysts said that they'd rather have Gus Edwards over Dobbins.
It's true.
Like, well, if 96% of professional analysts want this, maybe I'm living in a crazy world and I don't know football at all. So sure, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is Gus Edwards. So I then drafted Gus Edwards in my redraft league, and now look who is balling out. And it's not Gus Edwards. It is not. It is J.K. Dobbins. He looked explosive. He looked good. And now I do not have him, and I'm So sad. So
You have him in
sad.
Dynasty.
I have him in Dynasty, but
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I want to see. I mean, going up against the Panthers this week.
he's gonna feast.
Yeah, I think anyone will feast against the Panthers. Their backup to the backup might feast this week because the Panthers are that bad. So
Yeah, true.
if you have him, definitely pick him up. I mean, he's 50% rostered, so most likely someone drafted him. But if he's not, just a quick look-see. Just make sure. You got him. Get him.
Yeah, no, 100%, and especially in maybe 8 to 10 man leagues or whatever. There's a chance that both Dobbins and Gus Edwards are there on the board. And if I have Gus Edwards, right, and I'm looking at J.K. Dobbins and he's freed up, I'm gonna put in maybe around 30% of my fab on him.
Really that high?
Here's kind of how I measure fab, and I'm gonna maybe regret saying this. But this is how I do it in every single league, and I like to think I do a pretty good job at managing it. I like to wait at certain points during the season for certain pickups. I try to avoid players that are temporarily in action because of injuries for a couple brief weeks and blowing it all there. I prefer to spend it on rookies who are maybe behind some people and who's for instance Brian Thomas Jr. behind some guys, Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk, and he might be what Justin Jefferson was to Adam Thielen on the Vikings when he was first there. Adam Thielen was just coming off of a good season, and then Justin Jefferson did not care. He just happened. So that's kind of what I do. And J.K. Dobbins might have that sort of vibe to him. So I'm gonna go with that much.
Okay, Joe. What are you thinking?
Yeah, if he is for some reason on the waiver wire, I would be putting a large sum on Dobbins because it's not an injury related. It's just because he's that good at football. So I'd be putting probably I'd say 25 to 31% because it's the coach even said they're playing the hot hand. It looks to be Dobbins is the hot hand, and I'd much rather have him over a lot of other running backs right now. So
Gotcha. All right, so next guy here is Tank Bigsby. Now, Travis Etienne is still the starter, and I'd like to say I got the touchdown guarantee. One of them, not the second one. I'm sorry about the second one, but I forgot Daniel Jones sucks at football. So, Tank Bigsby is 5% rostered going up against the Cleveland Browns this week. Last week, he had 12 rush attempts for 73 yards, which matched Travis Etienne's usage. So, both of them had 12 rushing yards. He was not used in the passing game, so that is not part of his skill set. He's going to be a first and second down grinder. But should Etienne miss any time, I think Bigsby might be a play. He's probably not going to be a great one, but if you're talking he gets that much usage, they've been talking about it last year, that they wanted him to do more, and he did not seize the opportunity. Could this be the year? Are you willing to take the flyer? 5% fab bib on Tank Bigsby?
Absolutely not. That's a big fat zero for me. That's all I have to say.
yeah, I think I'm with Chris. Etienne's too good at football too. I know he had the fumble, but it's I don't think you count him out and you jump on this Bigsby train.
I'll take him for free. I'll put in a waiver thing for free and call it a day. But I ain't spending money on him.
All right. Next guy here is Bucky Irving on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 21% rostered, according to Yahoo, up against the Detroit Lions this week. In his week one against the Commanders, he had 9 rush attempts for 62 yards, which actually led the team in rushing yards over Rachaad White. 2 receptions for 14 yards on 3 targets. One stat I want to bring up here is the Detroit Lions against running backs. They're very good at defending the run. In fact, over the past 18 games, they've allowed a running back to score more than to rush for more than 70 yards just 4 times. That's really, really good. So running backs do very poorly against this defense. So I'm willing to take the shot on Bucky Irving as a cheap bid, but I'm not playing him this week. So this is one of these where you get him now, because if you don't get him now, you're not getting him. but this is not the week you're going to want to play him. What are you willing to do for Bucky Irving? Chris, we'll start with you because I know you have Rashad White and he was your my guy. So, what do you think?
2% as a insurance for injury for Rashad White. I'm not starting him. I'm not putting my flex at any point during the year unless if Rashad White comes down. And I'll tell you why. Sure, he led the team in rushing yards, but you got to also imagine that defense on that run side for the Commanders was kind of dialed in on the Rashad White end. And he still did fantastic on the pass. I don't care. Bucky Irving is just an insurance clause, and he will be dropped if another person comes up if I need to. I'll put 1 or 2% down and call it a day.
All right, Joe, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Chris. I mean, he played 30% of snaps, which is 70-30, which is kind of what we expected the Rams to do, but that's a different story. Yeah, he's just kind of a backup piece for me right now. White's the main guy there. If you have White, you can pick him up for maybe I wouldn't even put any fab on him. I'd just grab him and stash him.
Okay. Ray Davis on the I blanked. The Buffalo Bills. Sorry. 19% rostered up against the Miami Dolphins in Thursday Night Football this week. Played behind James Cook. That's for sure. It's James Cook's backfield, but he did look pretty good. He was pretty explosive from the plays I saw. He only had 3 rush attempts for 13 yards and a reception for 14 yards on a single target. But this offense is a little bit different. It's still kind of Josh Allen's show. I expected him to take a slight step back in rushing, but he just wants to helicopter his way into the end zone like it was like nothing happened. Like he didn't lose anybody. So are you willing to spend anything on Ray Davis, or is he just let him go?
I'm letting him go. He can have a day somewhere else. That's fine with me. Absolutely 0. I will not be picking him up.
Yeah, I'm with Chris 0 here. He played 10% of snaps. That's even worse than worse than the last guy we talked about. So,
all right, now this one I feel like we're all gonna disagree on, but let's see.
Oh boy.
Alexander Mattison on the Las Vegas Raiders, 4% of leagues he's rostered in, going up against the Baltimore Ravens. He had 5 rush attempts for 19 yards, 4 receptions for 43 yards, and a touchdown. Had 6 targets. Now, he was the only receiving touchdown in this game. He played still behind Zamir White as far as opportunities, but he's just had the better fantasy day. I think this is more smoke. I don't think Alexander Mattison is going to be anything. I think this is just right place, right time, right place. What do you guys think?
yeah, I'll disagree with you here. I think Madison is going to be the lead guy. He might not have gotten as many attempts as Zamir White, but he also played 60% of the snaps, whereas Zamir played 38%. So he might have not have gotten the rush attempts, but he played more snaps, and he got the receiving work, which in PPR and half-point PPR is more beneficial. I think as we go down the season, I think we're going to see more Madison and less White. He put it into perspective. He rushed 5 times for 19 yards, and Zamir rushed 13 times for only 44 yards. I mean, that's pretty bad. So
low efficiency.
I think Madison might be the guy coming up. So I'd put some fab on him. I'd definitely grab him. I'd say I'd put 10% of my fab on him and take a shot. So,
gotcha,
Chris.
I'd go 3 to 6%. It's a little too early. This one's a little riskier to me because of Zamir White. I'd rather throw more into J.K. Dobbins than try and deal with this thing going on in that backfield. So yeah, I'll throw 3 to 6 or something, figuring that maybe he'll slip through the cracks to me based on everyone else that we've talked about already. But yeah, I'm not going crazy over Madison. If I lose out on him, he ends up being a top 15 RB. That's fine. But yeah, I don't
think he'll be top 15.
I don't
see that in the realm of outcomes for this team, how bad they look, but it could. I mean, this is the week last year where Kyron Williams was a league winner because you got him on waivers, week 1 it was Cam Akers, and Kyron Williams took over the very next week. So I mean, just think about that for a little bit.
So you're saying there's a chance?
There's a chance. It's a low probability chance, but it's still a chance. One guy here, I'm just going to bring him up. He may have been rostered. He might be on the IR. Check Marshawn Lloyd. He's just going to be a stash. He's not going to be usable the first week he comes back from injury, which might not even be this week, especially with Jordan Love. But if you have an IR slot, pick him up, stash him there, and just in case. That's it. Moving on to wide receivers here. Big one is Rashid Shaheed. He is probably rostered in most leagues, 54% on Yahoo. Going up against the Cowboys, had a big day with Derek Carr against the Panthers. We don't really have to do too much for him, so just check if he's there, pick him up. Brandon Cooks is 32% rostered against the New Orleans Saints this week. 7 targets, 4 receptions for 40 yards and a score. 1 rush attempt for 5 yards. It's CeeDee Lamb and him. Now that Jake Ferguson will be missing some time, probably a good person to have on your team. 32% rostered, so he could be available for you. Are you willing to dump like 25%, or is that too much for you guys?
It's too much for me.
Mm-hmm. It's a little too much for me too.
You think so? Wide receiver 2 for the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Without a good,
that's a quarter of your budget for the entire year on week 1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so here, like I said, going back to my theorem, right? I like to shove, I make 4 or 5 big, or attempt to make 4 or 5 big acquisitions a year with Fab, right? And I don't want to waste that on a wide receiver 2. I'd rather put that into some guy who was the backup, who for someone else, season-ending injury, or a rookie, or some random guy who came out of nowhere, right? I'd rather do that than have the dedicated wide receiver 2 on the Cowboys. Is Jake Ferguson out for the year?
Not out for the year. He was last I saw it was an MCL sprain, 1 to 3 weeks. It's been kind of going all over the place, but I expect him to miss at least 3 weeks. So
yeah, it's simply not enough time that he'll be in that 2 position for me to give up that sort of equity.
Gotcha.
God, I sound like an investor. But you know what I mean, though. It's just that's just not how I like to play the game.
All right, Greg Dortch. Who would have thought we'd be talking about Greg Dortch? But here we are, 5% rostered, going up against the Rams this week. 8 targets on the Arizona Cardinals offense, 6 receptions for 47 yards and a rush for 4 yards. We've been here before, and we said, it's a one week wonder, and he went out the next week. So I'm willing to put probably about 15% down on Greg Dortch, because I think he's going to be involved in this offense. It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., which I know he had a bad stat line. We'll get into that on another episode. Trey McBride and Greg Dortch. I think those are the main guys in the receiving game. I know Michael Wilson caught the touchdown, but I think Dortch is going to be Mr. Necessary on this offense. So are you guys?
I hope so. I do have him in Dynasty.
Are you guys following 15%? Is that too much, or is that about right?
I'd probably be closer to 10%. Take the shot on Greg, because I don't think Marvin Harrison is going to be that uninvolved, and that's going to eat into Greg Dortch's numbers. I don't think he's the number 2. I do think it's Michael Wilson is the number 2, and I do think that what's the tight end?
Trey McBride.
Trey McBride. I think Trey McBride is also in front of Dortch. I think he's actually the fourth option on that team. Yeah. So I think it might just been a fluke this week, and I'd maybe take a shot and stash him, but I don't think I'd start him over any of those other 3 guys.
Gotcha.
I'm in a little bit of a lower boat. I'm not bothering picking him up unless if I have Harrison Jr. on my team. If I have Harrison Jr., I'll throw maybe a little bit in depending on my wide receiver situation. right? But I'm not hashing out double-digit fab for this guy here.
All
Personally.
right. Xavier Legette, speaking of Panthers, he was the lone bright spot. And by bright spot, think little tiny mag light with like AAA
Barely
batteries.
anything.
That's it. 16% roster, going up against the Chargers this week. 7 targets, which 4 receptions for 35 yards, and he led the Panthers offense with those 7 targets because Bryce Young is pretty bad. It was just painful to watch, man. I had to keep looking away. I'm like, what is going on with this team? Any interest at all in the pulse of Xavier Legette?
A little, if I'm being honest, like the tiniest bit. I would throw a little bit of fab down to try and get him, solely because I feel like if somehow they turn it around and it's not because of Deontay Johnson, it's probably gonna be Xavier Leggett. I'll take that chance with like a little bit of like with like basically no risk of like a couple bucks of my fab. Like I doubt there's gonna be a lot of competition for Leggett given how bad the Panthers are. Like no one's throwing over $5 into $100 fab situation here. Like
Oh, yeah.
no one's doing that. So
Yeah.
I'll take an opportunity and stash him. I guess for like 1 or 2 at most 3% and call it a day.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm kind of right along with Chris. Maybe a little higher, like 7, 8, because he does look to be one of the top targets there. I'd like to see at least another week. Maybe the Panthers do a little better and he gets more targets and a touchdown, and that's points. So I'd stash him.
Alrighty. Now, Alec Pierce here is our next guy on the list. Indianapolis Colts, 2% rostered. He plays the Green Bay Packers this week. 3 targets, 3 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. And man, was that a beautiful touchdown. What a throw and what a catch. Any interest, like what do you think? Is he the wide receiver 2 for this offense behind Michael Pittman Jr.? Is he the guy you want? I know Josh Downs didn't play, and Adonai Mitchell had a bad game because of a couple miscues on the part of Anthony Richardson. But if everyone's healthy, what are you willing to spend on Al Pierce?
I'm in the same boat that I was with Greg Dortch. I only want him if I have Michael Pittman Jr. And I'm not willing to blow the bank because I truthfully believe that all things will be set right in order with that offense, and Pittman Jr. will be fine and produce. And I will never need to start Alec Pierce because of everyone else in that roster. So maybe a couple bucks.
Okay. What about you, Joe?
See, I think Pierce is the wide receiver 2 there. I think he had more snap percentages than Adonai Mitchell. So I think Adonai Mitchell might be the wide receiver 3 there. And when Josh Downs is healthy, he might take Adonai's spot over Pierce. So I might spend a little more on Pierce. I'd say like 8-9% of my budget on him. And I don't know if I'd start him. I might flex him, but definitely have him on my team in case he has another big week, and then be like, okay, Richardson's actually looking for this guy. So
Yeah, I think that the way I'm looking at the Colts after seeing week 1 is you're not going to expect 60-yard bomb touchdowns every week, and if you do expect that, this is not the game for you because it ain't gonna happen. Anthony Richardson completed 9 passes, 9 out of 19. That is really, really bad. But for fantasy, he had a couple bomb touchdowns, so it worked out, and he rushed. But he did not look good. Like let's not think he looked great. He had some really good throws and some real bad ones. Real bad throws.
Someone clip that, I beg you.
Don't worry, I will. But still, I think what's going to happen is one of these wide receivers every week you're going to be happy with, and all the other ones are not. I think that's just Jonathan Taylor will be fine. Anthony Richardson should be good because he rushes the ball. Then you get one wide receiver. It's going to be roulette every week. Who knows which one is going to be. So, moving on here, we have Wan'Dale Robinson. I know you may be looking for a wide receiver this week. And he had 12 targets. 12. I know it's a terrible offense, and Daniel Jones is a really bad quarterback. But, again, he led the entire Giants offense in targets, so that's not nothing. I don't think I would spend. I don't. If you're watching on YouTube, you see Chris basically just saying no the entire time. Go back, it's a trap. But it's still something. In a PPR league, 12 targets means something. What is the absolute most you're willing to? I guess what situation do you need to be in to even think about putting him as a waiver claim? Not to win him, just to put him to press the plus button, the next to his name on your app. How desperate?
That's tough. I have Puka Nacua on my roster, and
He's gonna get 0 targets this week.
Yeah, who else got into this week on the wide receiver? Oh, maybe I have Marvin Harrison Jr. too. I somehow have both of them. Sure, let's say that's your hypothetical that you're going into, right? I will do it at that point. I'm very lucky that I don't have to deal with that at all. And maybe I also have Malik Neighbors. I don't know. Maybe you somehow managed to get all three or a combination of the three. That's
Neighbors
the only
did
way.
fine though. Neighbors did fine.
No, he
catches
did.
for
He
66
absolutely
yards.
did.
He's good.
He absolutely did. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it for the insurance. Like, if the Giants want to do something really dumb or something, I don't know.
If they want to do Giants things. Oh.
Yeah, no, literally. But yeah, that's it. Like under any other circumstance, nothing. Don't do it. It's a trap. I'm warning you not to do this.
All right. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not picking him up. He played 68% of the snaps, where Malik Neighbors played 100%. So that makes me feel good as a Malik owner. I know he didn't have a big game, but I'd still play him. It's the main target for Daniel. And Wandale, yeah, he can sit on my bench if I'm desperate for a flex spot, maybe. But with the state until the Giants show me more, no.
He's going against the Commanders, and the Commanders just let Baker do whatever he wanted to them. So it's
Baker's good.
Also a good team.
Yeah, just pointing it out there. You know, these last couple guys are going to group together. We have Rashad Bateman, 13% rostered. KJ Osborne, 1%. Josh Reynolds, 1%. Decent matchups this week. Nothing crazy. I mean, Pittsburgh Steelers one might be a little tough for Josh Reynolds, but all of them had a decent amount of targets, and Josh Reynolds actually led the Broncos in receiving yardage. Any of those guys you're willing to take the shot on at all?
No.
$0 bids. Perfect. All right, now we're going to get to probably what everyone was expecting to be the beginning, but tight end. Isaiah Likely. He's probably going to be your top pickup in leagues this week on waivers.
It's either him or J.K. Dobbins.
People are going to blow their fab on him. Should you? Joe, what do you think?
No, it's a trap. I think with his limited return to practice after the car accident, I think Mark Andrews wasn't 100% back yet. And I think week 2, we're going to see much more Mark Andrews, much less Isaiah Likely. And I think this was just a week 1 thing. And let other people spend all their fab on Likely. And then you benefit from when Mark Andrews comes back and does Mark Andrew things.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm only picking up Isaiah Likely, I think, if I have Mark Andrews. Maybe just so, maybe if I hear some inklings, I throw him in there instead of Mark Andrews. That's actually what I have him in one league. That's exactly what I did. I actually drafted Isaiah Likely as well, the last round. That's exactly what I did. And it's the same thing. In another sense, right? That team is insane. I mean, Zay Flowers is still there. He didn't have a fantastic game, but he will be there, right? We can't forget about him. He'll take plenty of targets away from Zay Likely. Derrick Henry apparently likes to catch a ball or two every now and then. Lamar Jackson likes to run. It's not sustainable. It's definitely a trap. I am only putting in a couple bucks if I have Mark Andrews. That's it.
If I didn't have Mark Andrews, I'd probably go up to about 15%. He's going to go for way more. He could be one of these, $45 fab bids that goes this week, and I think that's a mistake. Because like you said, Joe, Mark Andrews is still going to be the guy car accident and stuff. He was also double covered most of the game. Like Steve Spagnuolo,
When he wasn't playing left tackle.
he decided that you're gonna have to beat us not with Mark Andrews, and they stuck to that game plan, and it worked. I mean, he had very very few targets, so they basically just took him out of the game altogether. And then Isaiah Likely had these short dink and dunk passes that the one he broke. I mean, he's athletic. Let's not take anything away from him. He made that touchdown happen, but those are not sustainable in fantasy. You can get those every now and then. It's awesome. He's a week winning tight end potentially, but I'm not willing to bank on that. Mark Andrews is going to be just fine. In fact, if you can, try to go out and trade for Mark Andrews this week, because there's a chance this week you're not getting whatever. That door is going to slam shut in your face. So go send an offer out, because the person who has Mark Andrews, most likely, they're scared. They saw Isaiah Likely score a touchdown and almost get a second one and all these yards, and Andrews got nothing. So go try to get him. Next thing here, we got Tucker Kraft going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Played ahead of Luke Musgrave. 2% rostered. Real quick, what percentage? Chris,
Zero.
I'm picking him up. I picked up Luke Musgrave as my starting tight end, and when Tucker Kraft plays 96% of the snaps and Luke Musgrave plays 25, makes me feel really stupid and really bad about myself. So, I'm going to pick him up and play him instead, because I need a tight end. Yeah, sure, 5%.
Noah Gray. Speaking of tight ends, Travis Kelce was also kind of taken out of the game. He did a little bit more than Andrews, but still nothing crazy. Apparently he's 0% rostered and takes on the Bengals this week. Had a decent game, 100% catch rate on 3 targets for 37 yards. Any interest in him, or Kelce bounce back?
Kelce bounce back, 0% fab. I'm riding or dying with Kelce if I have him in the league.
Last guy here, Mike Gesicki, 4% roster, Kansas City Chiefs. Dropped a touchdown. Bengals look pretty bad. Any interest at all?
No.
It really, a little bit. If T. Higgins is still out, right? But hear me out. If T. Higgins is still out and Jamar doesn't sign this contract, I'd play Gesicki as my tight end. Who else is Joe Burrow to throw to?
No one. He can't throw to anybody, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
All right.
So, yeah, I'd pick him up. I like him if those two situations continue.
So just to recap for the waivers, we are putting J.K. Dobbins at number 1, Baker at number 2, thinking likely number 3.
Likely or Madison at number 3, just off of what's probably going to happen in the trenches of who picks up what. But yeah, definitely a combination of those 4 in the top 3.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's it. It's going to wrap things up for us this evening. Those are the waiver pickups for the week. As we said earlier, we're recording this during the Monday night game. If you follow us on our X account, if there's any other things that happen during this game, we'll definitely put that on there. Maybe adjust some of the waiver rankings that we have. But as always, follow the show on YouTube at youtube.com/@theheroesff. We're on X. We're on Apple Podcasts. Everywhere you find your podcasts, we are there. So until next time, everyone, so long. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. Follow us on Twitter at TheHeroesFF.